First, thank you for joining me. This is Mike Zarnowski. I'm the Senior Director of Sports Programs for Special Olympics Maryland, but I'm also serving as the staff lead for distance running. So thank you for joining us. We'll try to keep this short since we have a lot of very experienced coaches, and I'm sure everyone wants to be off in time to catch the debate tonight. So thank you much. If you could please just be attentive to your background noise. We only expect 5 or 6 coaches on tonight, so I don't think we have to have everybody mute your phone if it becomes inconvenient. But if it gets a little noisy, if you could mute, that would be great. Again, it affects other people being able to hear, and it also will affect the recording. As is noted there on the screen, we are recording the session so we can have it available for anybody who wasn't able to join, or if people need to go back and make reference to it in the future. So, but we'll cruise right ahead. Again, that's the agenda. We are putting together an athletics sports management team. We currently have 6 sports management teams in place. They are tennis, soccer, basketball, golf, powerlifting, and flag football. In a September, October, November timeframe, we will be forming additional sports management teams for the 5 what we call summer game sports. So track, aquatics, cheerleading, softball, and bocce. And we're only going to have one athletics team that would cover the distance running as well as the competition at summer games. There's so much overlap, there's really no point in having 2 different teams for that. So anybody who is interested in participating in that, the role of the sports management team is both to help expand the sport, looking at finding additional competitions or ways to have additional competitions, increasing the number of athletes who are participating, improving coaches' education, so on down the line, as well as becoming involved and engaged in the running of the state competition as well. It's composed of coaches, officials. We'd like to have at least 1 athlete on, and so on down the line. So if that's something that might interest you, and I should say for coaches, you would still be able to coach your team. You would not be expected to stop coaching to help run the state tournament. But if that's something that interests you, let us know, and we'll send out some invites and such. We want to get some diversity from across the state, as well as experiences and experience outside the organization, as well as within Special Olympics. So, and I know our distance running coaches are a good solid pool of folks to draw from for that, with a lot of experience. So I'm just going to go right ahead. You all are experienced with this, but just as a reminder that nobody, no athlete, no volunteer, can participate in any manner in Special Olympics without a current medical form, or in the case of a volunteer, without a current and up-to-date volunteer application. And there are no exceptions to this policy. There's no 1-week or 2-week grace period that they can practice without a medical or without a volunteer app. So just remember to keep that in mind, and we'll go through the deadlines on the next slide. So the deadlines for there's 3 that you need to be paying attention to. One is the training registration deadline. As a reminder, that's when, which is September 3rd. That's when you need to have all of your participants, your athletes, your partners, if you're doing unified races, coaches, volunteers, etc. Everybody who's participating in your distance running program needs to be registered in GMS. That is the actual deadline by which it needs to be in GMS. So be sure to contact whoever handles GMS for your county. GMS is our software program. If you don't know who that is, I think actually for most of your counties who do distance running, I can tell you who it is. But if you don't know who it is, check with your area director, and they can put you in touch. But find that out now. That individual, if they need to have it in by the 3rd of September, can't receive it from you on that date. They need to get it earlier. So talk to them. Typically, they're going to want it a week or so ahead of time, but work it out directly with that individual. So anybody who is added or is not added by that date, we certainly do want to include and have registered everybody who participates, even if they start after that deadline. But after that deadline, they would not be eligible eligible to participate in the state competition. Then this next one in terms of the last day for missing forms to be submitted, which is September 14th. That does not discount what I just said on the previous slide of no one can participate without a medical. Basically, we know that you're going to get updated medicals in or updated volunteer applications, or you may have somebody brand new show up the first day of practice and have the medical in hand, so on down the line. So this gives a little bit of extra time to get the medicals. They have to be scanned and submitted through a secure server to protect the privacy and security of all of our participants. There is somebody within your county. I don't actually know who all those individuals are, but check with your area director so that they have that information in. And the medicals that need to be submitted by that date, or every athlete needs to have a medical on file by that date that is valid through October 24th. Which is the date of the state competition. Similarly, every coach or unified partner or volunteer needs to have it valid through the 24th. Also note there, many of you, or all of you, as when you first became a volunteer, as a part of that process, you had to complete a protective behavior certification. We actually need to have that renewed every 3 years. It takes about 20 minutes or so online. It's a risk management component just for the safety of our athletes. It's a very short presentation online and then a very quick quiz just to be sure that you captured the information. That would need to be renewed then. We will let you know. We will send a note to anybody who is registered as to whether they're, or anybody who's participated in the last year or two, as to whether their protected behaviors needs to be upped, along with the link to do that. And then also, we'll talk a little bit more about head coaches, but we started instituting with basketball this year, or actually implementing a long-standing policy that, at least for head coaches, that all coaches need to be certified by Special Olympics in their sport. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's the date by which that is due, is the 14th, that needs to be completed. Actually, as it turns out, almost all of our experienced coaches for distance running, I have looked up everybody who was a head coach last year, and John Worley, I think, hold on a second. Yeah, Bob Stack, John Follett, John Worley, and David Lang, you're all fine. The earliest any of you, your certification expires is 2017. For other folks, you would need to then, so you don't have to worry about that. Other folks who are head coaches for programs would need to get their certification in by then. And then the competition registration deadline, which is October 1st, that's the date by which the actual events that the athletes, or if you're doing a unified run, that they need to be in GMS. Again, they need to be in the computer by that date, so work with your GMS manager in advance to work that out. That's when they have to be in their event along with an entry score for that event. Any athlete or partner without a competitive event at that point in time by that date will be deleted from the state competition. So work folks out. If we're not trying to be punitive with these deadlines, if something comes up or there's some unique situation that you need some flexibility, in many cases we can do that. If you're in that situation, have your area director in advance, if at all possible, contact your regional sports director, and that being Melissa Anger, Nick Anderson, or Sam Hodap. He doesn't have that title, but he serves that function for Baltimore County and Baltimore City. Have them contact them, and they can have your area director contact the regional sports director, and they can potentially work with you. I can't promise it can happen all the time, but and I'm not talking about giving 3 extra weeks or something, but a few days frequently can be worked out in, if there's some kind of a unique situation. And this slide here, I should also say we're going to send the slides out to you probably tomorrow morning. This is just a reminder of pretty much everything I just said about talk to your people. I'm not going to read through all the forms and slides here for that, but they're here for your reference if there's any question. But bottom line, again, athletes need to have their medical valid through the state tournament. There's copies of the medical and such. And then similarly for volunteers, that's coaches, head coaches, as well as assistant coaches, or if you have unified partners, or if you have some, many county programs have been registering volunteers for that sport. The folks that are very helpful and work with them, but they really don't classify them yet as coaches. So anyhow, all of those folks, they need to have their volunteer application in and screened and valid through the 24th of October, again, the state tournament. The one notation there I did want to highlight is that if you have anybody, a volunteer, coach, partner, whatever, who is under the age of 18, there is an additional form that needs to be completed for their references, and that needs to have a live signature from 2 different non-family references. And in many cases, if you know the individual quite well, you could serve as one of those references. But anyhow, that needs to be in by that time. And then the other notation with any of the minors is that whereas for the typical volunteer, their application or their screening is valid for 3 years, anybody who's under 18, it expires on their 18th birthday. So it could be valid for longer than 3 years, or it may be valid for less than 3 years. They just would need to get it there. And part of that, and the reason is when they turn 18, then they can sign for themselves, as opposed to having their parents sign the waivers. Let's see. So there's the volunteer application. I'm not going to read through that for you. And there's the student minor reference form that I was referring to a moment ago. Incident reports. You should all, I hope you all have hard copies of these in your first aid kit. That's the best place to keep them, because that's typically when you're going to need this. You're going to be going to your first aid kit. Just as a reminder, these are typically for any kind of an accident where somebody is injured and needed any kind of medical treatment. Does not necessarily mean that they had to go to the hospital or something, but if there's any kind of significant medical treatment where there may be a need for them to access Special Olympics insurance, or there may be any question of liability or whatever, fill this out. You can also use this. That's the primary use of this form. You can also use this form for any kind of property damage or anything like that. It's relatively self-explanatory. Just go ahead and complete it, and do this as soon as possible. But of course, make sure that the injured individual is taken care of first. This obviously does not take priority over first aid treatment, but as soon after that as possible, have it taken care of, have it completed. And then if you could, please, as is noted there, send a copy not just to headquarters, as is noted at the bottom of the form, but also to your area director, so that he or she has that information in as timely a manner as possible. And then also, if you're holding a competition, there is a competition sanctioning form. It's relatively straightforward. We use this form to inform other folks who may be interested in attending, if it's an open event, also for scheduling and posting on calendars. If you have not been to MySOMD recently, please do go there. We have updated that calendar dramatically and have systems in place to keep that updated. So we would put your event onto MySOMD so all the coaches can see it right away, or if not right away, but very quickly, and such. Also, if you're borrowing any equipment, this is a way that you can ask for that as well. So please do send it in. It says 30 days in advance. If you're in a unique situation again and you have less time for that, that's okay. We may just not be able to give you the support that you may be looking for if it's less than 30 days. So, head coach certification. So since this is new for many of you, although actually I think most of you were coaches for summer games, so it would have applied there. So actually, no, I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but bottom line is this is a long-standing policy. This is not something new in terms of a new policy for Special Olympics. It's just that Special Olympics Maryland for many years has not enforced this policy, and so if you don't enforce it, it doesn't get adhered to. So anyway, we have started doing it since we've improved our coaching training opportunities, and there's been some loosening up of what we can include as a training opportunity. So we've started adhering to it for head coaches right now. For fall sports, well, for all the sports it applies. In the future, potentially, I would even say very likely, as early as next year, starting with the summer game sports for 2016, we will be applying this to all coaches, which is actually what the policy is. It's that all coaches need to be certified. For new coaches, there's a phase-in period, or new coaches who aren't head coaches, I should say. But the plan right now is to actually roll it out and include it for all coaches, starting with the summer game sports in 2016. For you, for distance running, a head coach is whoever's the head coach for your program. You only have to have one per program. You could have more than one if you wish. That's fine. Also, if you use the sport coordinator model, which some counties do, where there's somebody who handles a lot of the decision making and planning for the season, but doesn't necessarily serve in a direct coaching capacity, that person would also need to be certified. That's considered a head coach. If that person is just doing paperwork, is just collecting forms, and is maybe handling some of the communication with the families, that's more of an administrative role, but some people or some counties still use that same term. That wouldn't necessarily be a head coach. But if that person is really making decisions related to the sport and related to the operations of your program, then they would need to be. It's valid for 3 years, and probably over the weekend, potentially tomorrow, we'll be sending out updates with all the everybody's status, the courses you've taken, so on down the line, and what learning opportunities. Although the ones specific to each sport we're going over with coaches here. If you have previously been certified by Special Olympics in athletics, again, athletics and distance running, there is no separate certification for distance running. If you've been previously certified in athletics, even if it has expired some time ago, currently we are allowing you to just renew. And renewing an existing certification, you just need to take every 3 years either a new general course or a course in general related to sports or working with individuals with disabilities, or you can take one that's specific to the sport. We'll talk through some options in a moment. If you have never been certified in athletics for Special Olympics, then there is a two-step process. One is you need to complete, typically it's coaching Special Olympics athletes. You could, if you chose, do Principles of Coaching, which is a longer full-day course with that. And then, in addition to that, you'd have to take a sports-specific learning session. And again, that only applies to folks who have never been certified. And again, as is noted there, it'll apply to folks. Currently, we do not have any live training scheduled for coaches for distance running or for athletics. If there is a need or an interest in this, we certainly can schedule one. There is, you'll see on the next slide, some online learning. The other possibility that we could do if there is an interest, several other sports have found this valuable, is we can set up what we call a Master Coaches webinar. What that is, it's basically pulling together experienced coaches to talk to each other and sort of help each other solve problems they're having within their program. So if you have an athlete who, you try as you might, you can't get them to work at a good steady pace and maintain it, chances are there's another experienced coach in our program who has some ideas, may not be the solution, but has some ideas that could help you. And so the whole idea behind these Master Coaches sessions is to get at those experienced coaches together and really talk to each other in a facilitated conversation to help solve each other's problems. We've done it 3 or 4 times already for other sports, and we certainly would be happy to add it in here if they think there's a need. I would say even some of the other sports coaches, the response has been so positive. Just having that chance to talk to somebody else who may help, and also kind of networking. Some of the feedback has been so positive that folks have said, you know what, even if I don't need to be recertified, I would attend this or participate in it again next year and every year because it was so valuable. So that's an option, given the level of experience we have with so many of our distance running coaches. If folks think it's worthwhile, we can certainly set one up for the near future. We also, a lot of areas are holding coaching Special Olympics athletes programs and so on down the line. That's something we can do. This would be also one situation where I mentioned before when we were looking at the deadlines about some flexibility. If you need to have a coaching Special Olympics athletes course to either renew or get your certification, and it's being held 2 days after the stated deadline, of course we would allow an exception there. You just got to talk to your, or have your area director talk to their regional sports director, so they would take care of that. We certainly, I hope we come across as being reasonable people. So it's not trying to be punitive, but there's got to be a deadline or it'll never get done. So these are the online courses through ASEP, that's American Sports Education Program. We continue to offer subsidies in some counties. I don't know that all of them do this, but in some counties, the county covers the remaining part of the cost. But there is a coaching track and field principles course. I think that is mostly, well, all of these are self-paced. Some have an online media-based kind of component. Some others are, it's more teacher reading from a book and doing some additional activities. I have to be honest and tell you I'm not 100% sure whether the coaching track and field principles that's here is in that category. I can say I am a big fan of ASEP, and they're part of Human Kinetics, which is a publishing company. I own between the two sports that I currently coach, which are track and soccer, as well as used to coach basketball. I've got a couple dozen of their books and find them immensely valuable. Their stuff is great. And the only caveat I would say if you want to take the online course is you have to adapt what they say to the based on the disabilities and the capabilities of your athletes. So that's there. Then down at the bottom also, if you need to just take a general course, there's several different things. They have an online version of coaching Special Olympics athletes, but there's several other options here. So nice variety of different options that you can take. So the last thing we want to have folks do is sit through the same course or take the same course every year or every 3 years. That would really be defeating the purpose. The whole idea is to expand your capabilities and expand your knowledge base. In addition to, here, this is sort of a listing of the sport-specific options that are there. We mentioned about the live training. We could do an online training. Mentions about ASEP, National High School Federation courses. We also are permitting to count NGB courses. So anything through USATF. If you're familiar with them, they have some excellent coaching clinics and such. That can count as that as well. Would recommend checking ahead of time just to be sure. If it's something that's a 15-minute online course or something like that, that probably wouldn't take. Maybe there needs to be some meat to it. But at the same time, the length is not the determining factor, other than if it's so short that it really hasn't added much. But check ahead of time. I can say any of the live courses. I've been through several of their coaching clinics that they have, which are typically excellent, and those would all be counted. Either USATF or Special Olympics officials training counts. I've mentioned the master coaches. Being an instructor in any of these would be also counting. And then we haven't offered the structured mentoring experience. We'll be developing that as an option, hopefully to launch at the beginning of 2016. And then anything else, we're really open to any other options. Just let us know if you have any ideas. In terms of general courses, you see similarly a number of those options that are there as well. If you are a T, I did want to point out here, if you are a teacher or through your profession, you need to take continuing courses or whatever, and the nature of those courses are applicable to coaching or working with individuals with intellectual disabilities, those can count. To date, we've only had one person who happened to be a track coach who submitted one of the courses. It wasn't a course she took on coaching. It was working with individuals. I forget exactly the nature of it, but submitted it. We had to see a curriculum just so we had an idea and could confirm that it was appropriate. It was a pretty simple process, and She basically got credit and renewed her Special Olympics coaching certification for something she had to do for her professional licensing or continuing education for that. So have no problem with counting it if something you're already doing for that. So now into the meat. Distance running, same events. We are offering the unified events again there, so pretty straightforward. Eligibility, the going to a qualifier, and here also, depending upon the different events that you're going to, or the event that the athlete is going to run at the state tournament, it could be something that you're doing in-house. It could be something that's hosted by Special Olympics. It can also count if it is a legitimate 5K run or 10K run. I don't know if there's many 1,500, but there may be a 1,500 run that's being hosted for by other organizations as well. Specifically, while we no longer have, Special Olympics no longer has any affiliation at all with the Baltimore Running Festival, so there is no connection there. Running there in their 5K or 10K, or I'm not sure all the different distances they have, that certainly would count as a qualifier. What we're saying in terms of that kind of, if it's just some kind of a little fun run with no, somebody just guessed what the distance was and so on for a not-for-profit, well, those are wonderful events. It's not going to count for that. So if you have any question, reach out and we can get you an answer for that. Let's see. They can only compete in one event, of course, at the Fall Festival. There are the section of the athletics rules that got updated in March of 2014 didn't affect anything related to distance running. You can see there the different attire and uniform that's necessary. It does say that you can run barefoot, and that certainly is permissible for anyone who is running at the Fall Sports Festival. The course, some portion of the course is run on gravel. So I don't know that anybody runs barefoot, but I would highly advise against it in that category, in that situation. And I think virtually all of the distances have some portion of their course that goes over the gravel. All the starts are going to be mass starts for that given distance, regardless of what division they are in within that event. So it'll be mass starts. We highly recommend to go and utilize the course in advance. It'll be set up. Typically, we have it set up the Friday night before the Saturday competition. So as early as you want to get there, go and take your athletes out. Even if you are familiar with the course, there's going to always be some subtle changes. We'll be looking at it. Bob Stacken, I don't know if Bob's on the call or not, had talked at the lab. Hey, Bob. We had done a tour there and had discussed the possibility of making some adjustments. So there may be some adjustments to the layout. But we, of course, will give you the course guide at the pre-competition webinar. But even if you're familiar with it or your athlete, there's no change. It's valuable to go out there and take a look because you never know where there's a little bit of mud or whatever. We'll try to avoid that as we lay it out. Depending upon the time and depending upon how many golf carts we have available, it's also possible that one of the volunteers may be able to take you out, you or your athletes out on a golf cart to at least inspect the course that way. Cannot promise that, cannot guarantee that, but that's a possibility that we may be able to do that. Again, a lot of this here applies to the state tournament, but hopefully you have this capability at all of any of the events that you may be hosting that in a spectator space at various points, and we'll continue to have that there. And then also the note there is that that anybody cannot any spectator can't run with the athlete and can't provide any assistance to the athlete as they're going through. We would have for the longer distances, we would have water stations as necessary, strategically placed, but they can't receive any assistance on there. For the unified run walk, and it's a run, but the walk is there in case anybody is can't handle the run and are still working their way up. But the unified pairs really are running together. It's not separate, and they should be finishing the race or have to finish the race within 5 seconds of each other, or they get disqualified. That does not mean that they run holding hands, although that is certainly an option, or they may touch and such. Of course, look at age appropriateness associated with that, but I also know that I think last year we had a very young runner who was running with a partner. Typically, I would also say that just as with golf, and I think with bocce as well, we don't really stick in for this, or we won't stick with really strict adherence to any kind of age difference between partners. This just as with golf, where a parent and a child, the athlete, somebody under 18, could be playing golf with a parent. Similarly, in running here, we would allow that as well for here. Or a family member, whatever the case may be. Ideal, of course, would be to have the partner and the athlete the same age, but we do want to allow for that in this kind of a scenario and situation. Others, again, qualifiers, they basically just, they need to follow the rules, Special Olympics and NGB rules, have knowledgeable and qualified officials and judges. Note for here, we are not saying that they have to be NGB certified officials or judges for the course. That would be ideal, that would be wonderful, but we aren't saying that. Also, we can, if you need or wish help in training your officials, we can certainly, with appropriate advance notice, we can certainly assist you with that as well. You need to have medical personnel on site. That could be an EMT, a nurse, could even be with, if the person, it could be an athletic trainer if that individual has appropriate training for that. Ideally, it would be 3 or more counties, but again, I know with distance running, it may not be the case that you can get that many counties together. But you can also do at least one of the qualifiers can be an in-house, and the other can be going to another county, and running there, or being with a going with a mainstream or another race that's out there. Let's see. Right now, the only qualifier that I know of that we've been told definitely about is one that Howard County is hosting on October 4th. And thank you, John, for hosting that. I know that, or I believe that Montgomery County has typically hosted one, I think in conjunction with a special event. But is there any, is anybody else at this point have a distance running qualifier that they're planning to host this season?
Yeah, Mike, this is Bob Sack.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah, the one you mentioned about for Montgomery, that's being run in conjunction with our Inspiration Walk, which is a big fundraiser, and that's unfortunately the only date that we were given on that was October 4th, which is the same as John's.
Oh, okay.
So that's real unfortunate. In addition to that, on September 20th, I believe that's the date of the tunnel run in Baltimore.
Yes.
Which has a little bit of a connection with some connection with Special Olympics. And last year, all of our 5K runners ran that. And I believe that John Worley's people are going to run that as well. But I also have about 10 runners who run less than that, who can't run 5K. And so I have permission to put on a kind of mini qualifier at Good Counsel on that day, again, September 20th. And we would just run the shorter things like the 1500,
right,
and the 3000 and the 800.
Right.
So if anybody we'd love to have other people come to that. If you have athletes who can't run, who can't do the full 5K for the tunnel run.
Oh, great. Okay.
We'd love to have you. That'll be at noon time on September 20th at Good Counsel.
Okay, and Bob, are you the contact person if anybody's interested?
Right.
Yep. Okay, cool. We'll put that on the calendar then. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, and you mentioned also the tunnel run. For many years, the tunnel run is absolutely a qualifier. For many years, it's been able to be offered to the athletes for free. with some additions to it, including chip timing and such, the incremental cost or the cost of having one individual has gone up significantly. So unfortunately, instead of being able to make it free to all the athletes, we are offering athletes a $15 discount. As you see on the slide, they're using they enter a code of SOMD15. They do need to pre-register for that. That's not something you can just walk up the day of the event, because the volunteers who are handling registration that day would not be able to handle it there. But you can do that, and the link, you'll get these slides again, and you get the link there that if anybody's interested in doing that. And that is a 5K, as Bob mentioned. Okay. And again, I noted there that we're not involved with the Baltimore Running Festival anymore, but if you run in that can still count too. Anybody else looking to host anything? I would also toss out, if you wish to invite another county up for your practice session, or another area up, and have them run on your standard course. I'm assuming most of you at your training locations have mapped out your 800 and your 1500 and 3K and 5K courses at your site so that you can train appropriately. So if you wanted to have another area or another county come up and run as a part of or within the context of your practice, that certainly can count as well. It doesn't still submit a sanction form, but that would be great too, and it gives a little bit more varied competition for folks too. Okay, going through. This is just a reminder of the deadlines that are coming up or associated with, and that's, I'm sorry, the Howard County Powerlifting Qualifier is, I've used the powerlifting slides as the basis for this. Sorry, let's change that right now. And we'll add in the other events that Bob just mentioned too before I send this out. And then just resources, reminders. We will have a distance running guide that will come out. It'll be out by the 17th of August. I don't think we ever got it out last year, but we absolutely will have it out by the end of next week. If you have not gone to MySOMD, I know that it had been fairly frustrating. We've had major upgrades, and now there is real information that's valuable and worthwhile there. I'll be posting some stuff from USATF and some other sources on there as well. There's a folder in there for coaches or for distance running and also one for athletics as well that will start populating stuff. Then the other thing, just as a really valuable tool, and I think that there's a reasonable section in there for distance running, but the SpecialOlympics.org site that has the online or has an athletics coaching guide. Hopefully you're all using them for your spring track practices, for those of you who coach track in the spring. But there's an excellent guide that they have there. It has embedded videos, so on down the line. Again, it's designed for all of athletics, but there is, I believe, a section there. It may be focused around on-track running, but a lot of the same principles will apply. But it's just an excellent tool. For my track practice or program in the spring, where I put on my volunteer hat and coach for that, I have several of my athletes who are very familiar with the web, and they go in there all the time and look at the videos to kind of help themselves improve their practicing. So that may be something you want to advise or recommend to them too. That's it. So any other questions that folks have? Okay. Well, we will let everybody take a little break, and then you got about 10 minutes before the full-blown Republican debate starts. So you can.
Mike, I vote for you over any of those guys.
Yeah, I didn't catch the earlier one today, but this is the primetime one. So.
I'm writing you in, Mike.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to write you in.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to vote for you over all those guys.
Thank you much, and we look forward to seeing you throughout the season.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Have a great night.